Yay. God, these stupid glasses. Oh, I hate glasses. Ugh. What's up, everybody? Michael Stephenson here, another video. So, I hope that you all have been able to check out my introduction video to the channel. If not, please go check that out if you can. It should probably be posted, obviously, on my bio page, on my profile page. But I wanted to go back and essentially break down some of the topics in that video. So, this is like sort of, I guess, introduction video part 2. But this one is specifically going to be focusing on the entertainment aspect. So in my introduction video, I was saying that one of the things I wanted to do with this channel is that I want to talk about entertainment stuff. But I want to also tell you guys why I'm going to be talking about entertainment things in the way that I'm going to be talking about them, because it changed drastically from my original plan. And also, I also want to address like why I'm, I guess, so late to the game of YouTube or even video creator content, especially being a writer. So as I just mentioned, yes, I am a writer. I've been trying to break into Hollywood for pretty much my entire life. Like, you know how some people, I would say honestly, most people, they think when they're younger that they're going to be like this one thing or whatever, and then they grow out of it and they're like, oh, okay, I don't really want to be that anymore. And by the time they get to either college or just the real world in general, they're like, yeah, I actually want to be this really interests me, blah blah blah. I have always known that I wanted to be an actor and a director and eventually a producer in films. How I got to be a writer is like a bit of a longer story, which I'll tell later. But basically, writing was somewhat of like a waylay, because I didn't have the health to do what I really wanted to do. So I was like, well, maybe if I can create stuff, then I can eventually get to Hollywood, right? So I've been doing the whole writing thing for, I feel like, long enough to at least get some sort of traction. And, I hadn't gotten any traction. And I guess that's not fine. I almost was going to say that was fine. It's not fine. It's a struggle. But, we all know that the struggle is there. The struggle is real, blah, blah, blah. So my initial thing is that somewhere around, it's 2023 now. So somewhere around 5 years ago, I came up with this idea to where I was going to, number one, I was very much so considering whether I could continue on doing this, continue on trying to get my writing to essentially pop or to get it noticed with people. And I also had come to this, I guess, sort of crossroads to where I thought, you know what? It might finally be time for me to just completely give up on this thing, to give up on my dream. And so I figured that in a weird way, I wanted to basically talk about the entertainment industry, but in an unadulterated way. So I didn't want to have any restrictions on how I talked about the entertainment industry as I was essentially leaving my initial dream, like the only thing that I'd ever wanted to do and ever wanted to be. As I was leaving that behind, I was like, well, okay, I'm going to talk about the entertainment industry pure and unadulterated. And it was, yeah, I will say that it partially was to like air my grievances of not making it and all that stuff, and to cry, boohoo, whine about it. But it also, more importantly, was because somewhere around 2011, 2012, I started to notice things that I guess people are only now really noticing or talking about. And it was that I noticed that the entertainment industry, something had drastically changed in the whole industry. That is not just in film, but in film, in television, in music, even in publishing, book publishing, and even in magazine publishing as well. And know and mind you that this was even before the onslaught of social media. And so I was trying to figure out what that was. And so it took me somewhere around 1 or 2 years to really figure it out. And I realized that as I was figuring it out, there were so many things that seemed wrong with the industry as a whole that it seemed like nobody was addressing. And I wanted to actually, in my original videos, I had somewhere around roughly 300 videos. ideas for videos that was going to talk about the industry in expanse, pretty much as a whole. And there was going to be almost nothing left unsaid. And when I say that, I mean, it was going to talk about literally everything that you can think of: wokeness, anti-wokeness, race relations in the industry, the LGBTQ stuff, sexuality within the industry, male chauvinism within the industry, poor stories and plots, sequels, remakes, just across the gamut. And then also, I was going to hopefully separate myself from all the other people who are doing essentially the same thing by not only digging in deeper, but bringing in other things like philosophy, theology, sociology, how our society is structured, and specifically how our structure of society in different civilizations and different cultures and how we relate to each other, how that is also influencing the entertainment industry as a whole, and sometimes not for the better. I was going to bring all this stuff in. Plus, I have a business background, business degree. So I was going to be looking at the industry from a business perspective too. So I was really going to give three different perspectives. One was going to be strictly from the business side. The second perspective was going to be from the consumer side. And then the third perspective was going to be from a creator side, from an actual person who wants to be an entertainer, or essentially, since I'm self-published, I basically am within the industry. I'm just not big within the industry. I'm not famous like that. So I was going to give three perspectives on most everything. And this included streaming. This included, again, everything in the industry. The problem is that, again, I knew that, and this was my debate, I knew that the only way I could really do it and go full-fledged honest about everything that I was feeling in the industry is if I could do it unadulterated. And the problem with that is that I know that artists, creatives, people within this industry are incredibly sensitive people. Like, we are incredibly sensitive souls. And yes, I include myself in this. One of the earliest videos of that entire series was going to talk about the hypocrisy of artistry in entertainment. And one of the things within that was going to talk about how there's a certain emotionality that is built within us, that actors, actresses, people within the entertainment industry as a whole, writers, producers, everybody needs to both have a very tough, very thick skin. And yet, and at the same time, we are also incredibly easily bruised. Like, we bruise as easily as peaches do. And so there's always this dichotomy that is at war with itself within the artist or the entertainer. And speaking of, I was also going to differentiate between what I thought an artist and an entertainer was, and why they are different, and why I feel like teach our art and entertainment, why we teach that incorrectly in school. But I feel like we teach a lot of stuff incorrectly in school these days because the teachers are not given the proper tools that they need to teach. That's a whole nother story. Maybe I'll talk about it later. But I realized that if I wanted to actually still work in the industry at some point, that I probably would have to neuter myself in speaking about the problems that I see within the industry, that some are inherent and some are being created still, like on a weekly, daily, or monthly basis. And then there was a second problem. The second problem is that I had picked specifically a particular show. I won't name the show now, but I picked a particular show. It is a show on one of the premier networks, let's say, where I thought that this show, which had, I can't even mention a whole bunch of stuff about the show, but I thought that basically this show was the epitome of the majority of the things that I thought was wrong on, or in Hollywood at least. And so I was going to go super in on that show. The problem is that the show stars somebody who I really have a crush on. And like I said, if I do want to actually get to the industry, like in my dreams, if I do somehow make it to the industry, let's say within the next year and a half, and I've said those things about that person, that might ruin my chances with that person. Like, because again, a lot of times some people never think like, oh, I'll never meet this person, so I'll just say whatever to them. But what if you did? Like, what if you had that chance? So I was like, you know what? On the outside thought that could happen, and I'm not putting that out there. I'm not trying to play into a delusion or anything, or trying to deliberately dilute myself. Though that was one of the things that I was also going to talk about in the artists and entertainers being somewhat hypocritical video, that we have to essentially deliberately delude ourselves about this thing. But I'm not trying to do that. But again, just on the off chance that I at least make it into the industry, I didn't particularly want to have that be so rough on the person. Even if I didn't, like get a chance to date them or whatever, but chance to date them or whatever. So I was going to do that, and it was going to be super rough. And one of the things is that I almost know for a fact that it probably would have went viral. Number one, as you all probably know, entertainment and any sort of gossip or talk about entertainment on YouTube is super big. It's super big throughout most of the internet these days, but YouTube videos where people are even just reacting to trailers for new movies or TV shows is huge. People get millions of views just on reactions alone. So I figured that if I put out all my videos, that some of them, my camera just cut off because another app was shutting down for some reason. Well, my phone just cut off. As I was saying, even to go into the business side of things, obviously, both in business school and just growing up in my family, I was always taught that you don't bring up a problem unless you have a solution to it. And so I was actually going to come with some solutions to some of the problems that I was seeing. And like I said, I was going to be so raw with everything, with all of my answers, with all of my critique of everything going on, that I was not even going to spare. I know a lot of people like to say that, well, you can't blame the fans. Like, no, I was going to go in on fans too. Like I said, I was attacking things, not attacking things, but critiquing things from three different standpoints. And from the artistic, artist, entertainer standpoint, I would have had to talk about the fans and what we are doing that is also influencing. Sorry about that. My camera cut off again. I apologize for that. So anyways, as I was saying, I was basically already, and this was last year of 2022, January of 2022, I was completely ready to give up on my dream of my entire life, literally from, the time I was 4 years old. I knew it, which interestingly enough, most people don't remember anything earlier than about 6 years old. I think it's called the age of recognition, or the age of, I think it's called the age of recognition. Anyways, one of my earliest memories is knowing exactly what I wanted to do. And it was me saying that I wanted to be like Steven Spielberg eventually in my life. So I was all ready, January 2022, to finally give up and give in and let this dream go. And basically, because I knew that by releasing all of the videos that I wanted to release and saying all the things that I wanted to say about Hollywood, not only would some fans come after me, again, I was going to talk literally about everything. So there was going to be some stuff talking about the sexism or talking about the racism and all that stuff. So there was going to be almost no stone left unturned. So I knew that not only would fans come after me, but then people within the industry would probably not want to work with me. So I was essentially burning every bridge before I was even able to make any of those bridges, and assuming the role of like a Hollywood legend, I guess you can say, before becoming legendary. And as you can see, even some of our legends that have come out, whether they're Quentin Tarantino or Martin Scorsese, or even Steven Spielberg, they've come out and they've lobbed a few fairly lightweight, fairly agreed to concerns and criticisms about the industry. And even they were sort of attacked for like, well, what do you know? Blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And no, let me make this clear, is that I am not blaming in a similar way to how some of them are, some of the ones that I just listed did. I'm not blaming all of Hollywood's problems on Marvel or even on one specific genre or way of making films. I think our problems go far deeper than that, and they connect it throughout the entire entertainment industry. Because we've seen and we've heard from musical legends that music is kind of having some of the same problems. Again, this is an entire industry thing. I was even going to talk intergenerationally about stuff, and how baby boomers versus Gen Xers versus millennials versus Gen Zers, how all of this stuff relates to each other and how it links to entertainment. I was going to try to link literally everything back to entertainment so that these videos did not get super off the rails and off track and become overly political. And like I said, I just knew that it is almost impossible. It would have been almost impossible for me to come back from that. And the only way that I ever could come back from it is if I was so incredibly brilliant, so incredibly genius, and so incredibly on my game with literally everything that I gave to the public that people essentially wouldn't be able to question, like, well, yeah, he said all this terrible stuff. Excuse me. Yeah, he said all this terrible stuff, but look at all the stuff he's given us. I mean, he's delivered on like almost every single time. So I was going to do all of that, and finally give up on my dream. And then a not so funny thing happened. I was hit by a truck in January of 2022. Now, let me back up here and let me put a disclaimer, because if you are going to be following my channel for any amount of time, then you are going to soon come to understand, probably through the Carbon Footprint art project, that I walk pretty much everywhere. I try to keep my carbon footprint as low as possible. So I walk pretty much everywhere, which is why it seemed so, I wouldn't say miracle, but it was very convenient that the one time I did finally get hit by a vehicle just happened to be when I was also in a vehicle. So I was driving a car, and it was an 18-wheeler that came up beside of me. And as I was pulling in front of the truck came and hit me on the side, and it turned me onto its front. And then it just sort of brushed me off. Luckily, I was also turning the wheel in, I guess, the way that the truck was sort of pushing me. Because if I had turned the wheel any other way, there was a lot more of a risk of the car overturning onto its side, which would actually have caused damage to me and not just the car. Somehow, I was able to walk away from that, I guess, completely unharmed. Again, I have a lot of pre-health problems. I have an incredibly bad back. I cannot actually stand still for longer than maybe like a minute without feeling, well, I always feel back pain, but I can't stand still for a minute without needing to move. It's hard for me to lay down. It's hard for me to sit as well, which is probably why you're seeing me like do these sort of weird contortions with my shoulders and whatnot. But somehow I was actually able to walk away from this accident. And it wasn't like it was a super duper bad accident, but it was the first accident that it was the first vehicle on vehicle accident that I'd ever been in while I was driving. So I was the only one driving. It was at night. Luckily, there was no snow on the ground. It just happened to be one of the warmer days in January 2022 in Ohio. So there's no snow on the ground. And I turned basically, I did a 180. So I was facing oncoming traffic, literally like 500 feet away from the start of a freeway. So it could have been way, way worse. And I can't say that I was completely shaken by the crash, but I did reconsider some things. So first off, I am not a Buddhist. I was raised Christian. I still consider myself to be Christian. I'm probably more of a liberal Christian than anything, but I was raised fundamental Baptist. I mentioned that to say that um, I did not subscribe to Buddhism, but I have studied Buddhism multiple times before. So I say that because I don't necessarily believe in karma. The you put bad out, you get bad back. But I do believe that literally every generation and every religion has something similar to, um, I guess, creating your own reality in some ways. Again, the recent trend has been Gen Zers and younger millennials saying about how lucky they are, basically waking up every day and telling themselves how lucky they are, or essentially just reminding themselves of their blessings. Basically, Gen Xers and older millennials back in the day, and the early aughts, the early 2000s, they had what was that book, The Secret, right? Before that, people just had regular prayer, or we've had so many things that essentially are these building blocks, which tell us that you can build your own future essentially by putting it out into the universe that you want this. Like if I said, oh, I want to date Zendaya or something, putting it out into the universe actually helped it to become real. It actually helped it to become real. And so I realized that with the videos, even though they were going to be honest, even though they were going to be my truthful, no holds barred takes on what I think is wrong with Hollywood and how we could do better, how we could fix it, how all of us could fix it, including the fans. I also realized that there was going to be essentially a lot of negativity in those videos. And so I wanted to be more positive about what is going on in Hollywood, even if I don't particularly like it. And I was hoping that maybe, well, honestly, I don't know I honestly don't know what I was hoping. I guess I was just figuring that I didn't want to put more negativity out into the world when we already have so much negativity. But even with all of that, I've come to this crossroads again to where it's like, I feel like I do want to share my opinion about stuff, and that people would, at least to some extent, want to hear my opinion. And again, that's another part of the ego of the artist, which I'll talk about in another video. So what I decided on doing, and this again is why I'm so late to the YouTube thing, is that what I decided to do is that I decided to scale back all of the videos, and I'm not really going to go into depth as much as I would have liked to do on almost any of this stuff. And I'm probably going to skip a lot of topics, but there are going to be some things that I still do talk about as far as the entertainment industry goes that I think we could improve on. But I'm going to try to keep the negativity at least in a constructive zone, right? To where it's not just bashing stuff just to bash it, which I feel like you can find that on the internet almost anywhere. I want to make sure that if I'm going to be talking about or critiquing something, that there is going to be some sort of constructiveness to it, hopefully. And like I said, I still wanted to preserve the possibility of a career in the future within the industry that I fell in love with as a young boy. So with all that said, I will be releasing a few videos probably per week, talking about some of the things within the entertainment industry that sort of either catch my eye or were things that I wanted to talk about in the original 300 plus subjects on why Hollywood does not feel like it used to, and what we can do to, I guess, improve it collectively.